Hello everyone and welcome to this latest RICS Tech Partner video discussion. My name is Andrew Knight. I've been with RICS for nearly 12 years now, and I sit within the standards, regulatory and thought leadership part of the organisation. And my role is to look at the effect of data and technology right across the built and natural environment. Now, with RICS having over 110,000 members working worldwide, right across the property life cycle, from land through planning and development, construction, brokerage, valuation, finance, all forms of property management, we have a huge opportunity to take advantage of what data and technology can bring to the sector. Our members also work across all the different asset types, whether that's land itself, residential, commercial, alternative and infrastructure. So once again, a hugely broad canvas upon which data and technology is providing huge benefits for the profession and their clients. And today I'm really glad to have Chlump from placemake.io to talk to me. So please do join me, Chlump.
Morning.
Hi, great to have you on the call. And before we get into the bits and the bytes and the technology side, it's always nice to have a bit of a kind of a human element. So it'd be great to hear about your background and how you moved into the kind of prop tech built environment space.
Sure, of course. I'm actually a mathematician by training. I earned my undergrad degree in economics from Northwestern University, specializing in game theory and option theory. I started my own consulting practice and was a strategic advisor to Abbott Labs, the pharmaceutical company. I earned my master's degree from NYU, specializing in mathematical logic and welfare economics. And I earned my PhD in mathematics from the London School of Economics, specializing in mathematical game theory. My goal there was to revolutionize the entire field of game theory by introducing a novel alternative solution concept for non-cooperative games. And my solution concept solves a number of long-standing paradoxes and challenges and is computationally simple and intuitive. But toward the end of the PhD, I was working quite a bit on AI and machine learning and spotted a gap in the real estate industry. I realized that the industry was and continues to be about 20 years behind finance, which is itself antiquated and relies heavily on gut feeling and intuition and could be made far more data-driven and scientific by importing approaches from mathematics, physics, and computer science. I wondered why there was no concept of a real estate quant and noticed an opportunity to source and aggregate all relevant data at scale and use sophisticated AI and machine learning algorithms to hunt for deep patterns, such as arbitrage opportunities and volatility trends. But rather than set up a fund, I concluded that it would be far more scalable to build an operating system and to deliver an automated end-to-end solution with applications far beyond real estate. I found that being an outsider has its advantages. First, there is no attachment to existing processes or practices. And second, fresh, unorthodox perspectives can yield novel insights.
Intriguing. And obviously placemake.io is what you're involved in now. What exactly is placemake.io? How can you summarize it for us?
Placemake.io is it's a leading provider of critical location data and analytics for the real estate community and beyond. Our technologies empower faster and smarter real estate investment and other location decisions by enabling clients to understand and analyze key drivers of performance, risk, and potential.
And how would you summarize, I mean, you talked about sort of current embedded processes and the lack of that kind of quant approach to real estate, comparing it with the capital markets. What sort of problems do you see placemake.io solving directly?
There are three fundamental problems. The first problem is the lack of accurate, consistent, and timely data. Critical asset and market data are often sparse, opaque, inaccurate, stale, disconnected, difficult to reconcile, tightly controlled, and not widely available. There are various reasons. Assets are heterogeneous and difficult to compare on a consistent basis. Assets are truly marked to market only when traded, a process that real estate being an illiquid market with really long average hold periods takes place infrequently, resulting in data sparsity. Other institutional data are often opaque, accessible at only coarse predefined granularities, and are tightly controlled. And real estate, more than other sectors, is greatly influenced by behaviors such as community engagement and home working that are not commonly measured. The second problem is the limited ability to source, aggregate, and analyze data. The industry as a whole lacks the resources and technological capabilities to source, aggregate, and analyze the data at scale, creating a reliance on intuition. And the third problem is that decision processes, such as deal qualification and underwriting, are slow, manual, and inefficient. requiring significant human intervention and resulting in bias and error. And the consequences are inefficiencies, suboptimal outcomes, and untapped competitive advantages. The solution, in our view, is to collect more data, to enhance the extraction and quality of the data signals, to leverage powerful non-traditional data, integrate complex multi-source data into a single source of truth, and identify key patterns and relationships to transform the data into actionable insights. Our data engine aggregates all key data, such as residential and commercial market demand, supply, capital values, rents, yields, demographics, economic factors, footfall, energy efficiency, transport, amenities, and so on, into one unified platform, eliminating the need to source, process, and integrate multiple heterogeneous data sets. And on top of this vast infrastructure sits PlaceRank, a decision framework that scores and ranks each place to provide essentially a credit score for location. And in short, our place intelligence platform automatically analyzes market dynamics, trends, and capital flows, maps demand and supply, and identifies market dislocations and opportunities, thereby optimizing the location decision process.
So what sort of use cases are you seeing your clients use the data for?
Within real estate, there are three fundamental use cases. The first is investment, for example, sourcing and qualifying deals, optimizing investment strategy to maximize returns and minimize risk while producing social value, IC reporting and underwriting, and so on. Consider a typical DD or underwriting exercise or IC memo, which requires a granular analysis of capital values, rents, depth of market, potential value, and so on. Our platform unifies and automates the analysis and identifies key drivers of performance, risk, and potential. The second is lending, for example, underwriting, due diligence, risk management, and so on. Consider the typical credit decision-making process or an insurance underwriting exercise. Our platform can identify, in addition to performance factors, potential hidden risks and mitigation strategies, and streamline the triage process to enable rapid decision-making. The third is occupational strategy, such as occupier catchment analysis, site selection, portfolio positioning, optimizing operational efficiency, and so on. Our platform can identify the optimal location for a given venture, the optimal use or positioning strategy for a given asset, the optimal distribution of assets within a portfolio, and so on. Just to give a couple of concrete examples, one global investment manager has been leveraging our platform to develop build-to-rent or an office investment strategies and outlooks, proactively identify opportunities, qualify and underwrite deals, in particular to determine whether a given proposed scheme is commercially viable, and conduct market analysis. And another example is one FTSE 100 REIT has been expanding its network of flexible offices and is looking to identify the most promising locations, and recently leveraged our platform to identify the optimal locations for flex offices based on market dislocations, demand-supply imbalances, walkability, and so on, and actual acquisition targets, so the actual buildings, based on investment criteria such as position on the street, natural light, and so on. And the digital assets, such as the shortlisted places and assets, and key value drivers and indices, and so on, have been so highly prized that they continue to be referenced by the wider businesses. But our technologies are sector agnostic and can be expanded into finance, for example, mortgage and loan valuation. And many of our indices can be used as the foundations for financial securities and so on. But also retail, advertising, logistics, transportation, city management, telecoms, energy, essentially any industry with a really strong location component.
Yeah.
And in parallel, we are generalizing our platform so that it can serve as the underlying infrastructure for all location and mobility applications. Our vision is for every organization to plug into and build on top of our stack. So whether an organization needs to build an investment strategy, optimize a portfolio, benchmark performance, develop a logistics routing algorithm, or manage smart infrastructure, we want that organization to do it on our platform.
Indeed. And I suppose it's become a bit of a cliche to talk about sort of COVID as being a kind of an inflection point or a significant milestone in many sectors. But what have you seen in terms of trends around barriers and enablers of innovation and adoption, both pre and post COVID? What's your view of the landscape and how it's evolved over the last, nearly 3 years now?
Perhaps the strongest trend that we have seen has been the exploding demand for data and analytics, especially very granular use-specific data, such as environmental data and so on, or non-traditional data, for example, office demand data, footfall data, and the like. And there are several reasons. To begin, the demand for data rises in times of uncertainty. It's critical to have as much information as possible to make informed decisions. For example, what is the future of the office? Will retail survive? What data points can be used to answer these questions? In addition, LPs, especially institutional capital, are now asking more incisive and challenging questions. For example, they are asking about more than the forecasted yield, and now ask about how sensitive the projected income flow of a, say, build-to-rent development is to rising energy costs that can compress the margin, or what the projected churn rate of a build-to-rent development might be. These are very much focused on OpEx and are not questions that were being asked before. Investment managers then look to our platform to answer these types of questions. One very topical reason is the changing macro environment, especially in the recent weeks. Take rising interest rates. If you are valuing an asset against a zero interest rate, growth potential is less of a concern, since real estate can very comfortably produce a return well above the bond yield. But now investors are asking deeper questions about growth projections. In parallel, the rising cost of capital is making certain strategies, especially leverage-heavy ones, very unviable. And with inflation, rising construction costs, and other challenging dynamics, everything now needs to be repriced. And data analytics become crucial. Another reason is a broader long-term shift from simpler asset like investment management to more complex operational management. We've noticed an increased pressure on asset owners and investment managers to understand and serve the end client. For example, the renter, the consumer, and so on. Managing a mixed use or retail estate or a build-to-rent development is becoming much more like managing an operational asset. And this pressure increases the demand for data that can affect operational efficiency and OpEx, and ultimately the risk-return profile of an investment. In parallel, alternative asset classes, such as senior living and so on, have been attracting far more attention. And these asset classes are by and large highly operational by nature, require specialist data. Finally, broader long-term structural shifts, such as an increasing focus on sustainability and well-being, the 15-minute neighborhood and urban design, hybrid working and localism, and so on, and evolving regulations, such as minimum energy efficiency standards and so on, are forcing change at a more fundamental level.
So, I mean, looking forward, what are the opportunities? What's the future of AI and data in real estate?
Well, I should probably go back a step and clarify what AI and machine learning are. The phrase artificial intelligence generally refers to the science and engineering of intelligent machines or computer systems, the intelligence that such machines or computer systems exhibit, and the simulation of human intelligence by a machine or a computer system. And machine learning is a subfield of artificial intelligence and embodies a set of approaches to the question of AI and algorithms to solve specific tasks, such as classification. Machine learning is often defined to be the science and engineering of setting a machine upon a task and teaching the machine to learn, in other words, to improve its performance with respect to the task based on experience and data, without needing to be explicitly programmed. And in the future, we'll see AI enabling, for example, continuous real-time data generation, collection, aggregation, management, and analysis, dynamic operation, intelligent monitoring, management, and optimization of the built environment, predictive maintenance and automated facilities management, algorithmic investment management, underwriting, due diligence, site selection, origination, portfolio optimization, asset positioning, and building management. Other key opportunities include enhancing manufacturing yields, facilitating risk management, automating quality testing, enhancing supply chain management, optimizing R&D operations, and automating support functions. We're now seeing a number of REITs and investment managers building technical teams and hiring software engineers and data scientists. And enterprises have now begun to operationalize AI and integrate it into core processes. And this is quite a dramatic shift from just a few years ago and is accelerating. We have lately been very excited about what has been called data-centric AI, the discipline of systematically engineering the data for successful AI. Now that the algorithms are sufficiently robust, it's possible to hold the algorithms and the architecture and so on more or less fixed and make gains by engineering better small data, essentially.
Mm.
And this is especially powerful in an industry such as real estate, which has relatively small data sets compared to, say, search, social networks, and so on. And we've been focusing heavily on engineering better data and seeing massive improvements.
Now, you mentioned an interesting point there about this almost sort of evolution of real estate firms building internal capacity around data science and machine learning. What would your advice be to a real estate firm that's kind of either starting that journey or is really just in the early stages of that? Because obviously that's a really big shift for the way these companies have run themselves and thought about data and technology.
Yeah, of course. Well, despite the excitement, technology has largely been underappreciated and undervalued in our view. For example, £250,000 for a static report would not really raise eyebrows, but 50K for a dynamic tech solution that does far more would be met with some doubt or maybe skepticism, even if the ROI is many orders of magnitude greater. It's important to understand first that adopting technology requires investment, and that a transformative solution that generates real value will not be cheap. It's worth paying for a valuable solution. And that's partly because poor solutions will lead to technical debt and legacy burdens, inefficiencies, and suboptimal outcomes. More broadly, adopting technology requires a strategic vision, very clear understanding of requirements, a strategic development plan, and strong data governance processes. There are two principles to keep in mind. The first principle is to start with the question. What is the question to answer? Focus on that and search for the solutions to answer it. And the second principle is to be creative and adventurous. Explore non-traditional data, experiment with various solutions, iterate on a process. Many companies are unadventurous or overly cautious, and by being so, miss pivotal opportunities. In short, the real skill lies in knowing which questions to ask, and there are a lot of solutions out there, and solutions and opportunities if you know where to look. When it comes to AI, it helps to adopt AI early and adopt an AI first attitude. AI will significantly enhance performance and efficiency and reduce costs by several orders of magnitude. And as AI systems improve, accelerating returns will accrue to those who effectively leverage AI. And conversely, those who fail to take advantage will face an ever widening gap.
So there really is, to use the cliche, a real first mover advantage there, in your view.
Yeah, exactly.
So in terms of Placemate.io, I mean, that there are clearly other market participants assembling data sets. What do you see as your differentiation in terms of the way you're approaching both the data sources you're using and indeed the algorithmic approaches you're using to actually work with that data?
Yeah, there are several differentiating factors. First, our platform is a comprehensive all-in-one solution in which all key data are integrated into a unified single source of truth. Second, we have official partnerships and trusted best-in-class data partners, ensuring data quality and integrity. Third, we have developed novel place types, such as the walking catchment around each station, novel analytical techniques and quantitative approaches, and non-traditional data. Fourth, we transform all of these elements into indices to uncover critical signals, such as opportunities and risks, and generate actionable insights at unprecedented granularity, and reduce reliance on intuition and optimize decision-making. For example, we've developed a novel regularity index that quantifies stability in rental or capital values and is a leading indicator of gentrification and appreciation. And finally, our decision framework, PlaceRank, scores and ranks each place to automate location decision-making. At this point, it might be worth going through a couple of concrete examples.
Yeah, surely.
Okay, so here we have a PlaceRank analysis. There are 4 different view modes depending on the type of analysis that you want to do. Here we've just loaded up the overall PlaceRank composite index, which is essentially a credit score for a location. And this is the overall score that tells you how attractive that particular place is based on the underlying indices and the weights assigned to the indices. You can adjust the weights very easily. You can put a positive or a negative weight on an index. And this is very helpful because it allows you to tailor the outputs to your preferences or your strategy. A very good example might be something like a deprivation. Some investors or users might want to put a positive weight on deprivation because deprivation is seen as a potential for revitalization. More conservative core plus investor might put a negative weight on deprivation because it's seen as a development risk. By adjusting the weights, you ultimately adjust the scores and can come up with a custom output. If you know which places you're interested in, you can very easily add a place, or you can click on it and add it. And if you don't know which places you are interested in, you can just add a filter. So for example, if you want to find all the places with a certain score or higher, you can just very quickly adjust and find those places. Essentially doing your strategic site selection and due diligence all in one step. And as we switch to the table view, we have essentially an executive dashboard. You can see, for example, how these star places are doing overall, but also how well they're doing with respect to each theme: performance, demand, and risk, all the way down to society, education, and culture. So you can see, based on the weights that you've assigned to the indices, where places are doing well, where they're not doing so well, and where there's some room for improvement. So you can see, for example, there might be some opportunity to do some retail placemaking and completely change the retail landscape in a particular place. The platform essentially guides you in terms of strategic intervention and development. We can go into more the underlying indices as well into more detail. So for example, if we take a look at what we've called the regularity index, here we are looking at the, essentially it's a quantification or a characterization of the stability in the rental values in the market. So you can see, for example, in the city center, the values are far more stable. Far stabler. People understand more or less what the value should be in these places, and same with the areas in the outskirts. But then you can see this light colored ring around the center. These places have far more instability, or you can think of them as being far more dynamic. People can't really agree on what the value should be. These are places that are essentially undergoing significant change. This is a leading indicator of gentrification. And essentially what's happening is people are pricing in different expectations into the current values. Some people think that the place is appreciating, others might disagree. You have a completely random mixture of rental values, and that's why you see this type of pattern. And you can track this over time as well. So for example, if we take a look at the time series, we can take a look at some of these places. So this is Hackney. Hackney started off very stable. It trended down towards zero, and then you can see now it's floating up and it's trending upward, because it's coming out of that transition period, and people now know more or less what the value should be in Hackney. Peckham, on the other hand, is essentially at zero, and it's hugging the axis. It's going through that transition process right now. And Lewisham, you can see it started up a bit stabler, and then it's trending down towards zero, becoming more dynamic, essentially following in the footsteps of Peckham. So you can see successive waves of gentrification. You have Hackney, and then you have Peckham, and then you have Lewisham, and you can track this over time. Investors are now using this type of index to look for that inflection point, going from stable to dynamic, and then going into a market at that point, and then influencing the trajectory of the market by doing some large-scale placemaking and development and investment. As another example, you can very easily identify opportunities and gaps in the market. Here, we've just loaded up a scatter plot with the total crowding, residential crowding index, which is essentially a measure of housing pressure. And you can see it's defined as the number of residents as relative to residential stock. If you have a lot of people and you don't have a lot of stock, you have a big issue. And on the y-axis, we have projected construction stocks. And obviously, it's a measure of supply. So now you can see where you should be targeting. So for example, you have outliers up here that have massive amounts of construction. If you're doing some investment or development, you would want to avoid these types of places because there's already so much new development there. You're going to be competing against all these new developments, and your absorption is going to be terrible. You want to be targeting the places that are down here. These are places that have far higher levels of housing pressure, much more need for housing, but essentially no construction. You have a lot of demand and you have a lot of very limited supply, or even no supply. That's exactly where you want to be. Finally, we can take a look at something else that we've defined, which is the what we've called a station catchment. And you can see here, this is the walking catchment around each station. This is based on the actual underlying street network. So it tells you how far you can walk from a station within a given amount of time based on the street network and the entrances of the station. This is especially useful because assets tend to be concentrated around public transport. People want to be close to public transport. Thinking in terms of 5, 10, and 15-minute catchments allows you to understand how a particular variable, say rent, varies as a function of distance to station. And you can identify critical signals and patterns at a very granular level that you might not be able to see when you're looking at, say, a submarket as a whole. In this particular case, we are just looking at the rental tenure. So what percentage of the population is renting in each market? So hopefully that gives a good overview.
It does, absolutely fascinating, and does show the power of these multiple data sets. And I think also that ability, as you described, for different clients to effectively weight the kind of factors depending on the use case and indeed their investment profile. So incredibly powerful. Well, Chlump, it's been a fascinating conversation, particularly thinking about the way you've brought in thinking from the financial markets into the way that the real estate market needs to evolve and look at the data sets. And indeed, as you've said, also not just the big data sets, but how you work with smaller data sets, which, as you say, characterize and perhaps present such a challenge to the real estate world that it isn't necessarily awash with huge data sets. But for today, thanks very much. It's been a fascinating conversation, and I look forward to speaking again soon.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.